A job is actually not very safe, but it's very stable. You know exactly when it is that you're going to get how much money until one day you get fired or something. Then it's not very safe. But for when you're working by yourself, it's actually the opposite. It's not very stable. You can't depend on a certain amount every single week or every single month, but it's much safer because you're able to diversify your incomes more. So if I can at least see the fact that I could make enough money in this career path by surpassing what I was making at Meta, then I would quit. And then it happened. I'm like, well, I guess I have to quit now. So then I quit.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Scientist Show. Today, we have a very special guest, Tina Huang. Tina, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. So my name is Tina. Currently, I am primarily a YouTuber, and I also like to say I do other internet stuff. This includes other forms of content creation. I also run a program called Lonely Octopus, which is for learning data and AI skills and working on real freelance projects. So to get to where I am now, I've definitely had a few iterations, I would say. So I started off in pharmacology, which is the study of drugs. Decided I didn't want to be a doctor. And then I got into bioinformatics, eventually did a master's degree at the University of Pennsylvania in computer science. Then I hopped around a bit. I was a software engineer for a little bit at Goldman Sachs. And then I worked at Meta as a data scientist for a couple of years before I quit my job to do my own things.
Awesome. And remind me how many followers you have on YouTube?
I believe we are at 560,000.
Oh, wow.
Now.
That's a lot. We'll also talk about self-study, future of work, freelancing, and productivity, etc. It's going to be a very fun conversation. And if you like the show, subscribe to the channel, give us a 5-star review, and leave a comment. So how did you get into data science?
Excellent question. How did I get into data science? So I did a computer science master's degree, which most people, actually I believe everybody in that program went into software engineering. So I also tried out the software engineering stuff, decided that I was not able to focus staring at a computer for that long, honestly speaking. And so I was like, okay, what other things are there that I can do that have a technical background? And data science is one of those things, and it felt like it fit me pretty well because I like doing the technical stuff. I like the idea of discovering things. I also like talking to people about my findings. So then I just applied to be a data scientist, and I actually applied to a few places. There was only one place that gave me an interview, and that was Meta, and I eventually did get that job there. So that's how it happened.
Yeah. And before that, you did a software engineer internship at Goldman Sachs. What did you work on there?
Good question. Banking stuff. So I was on the team. Okay, gosh, I think it was called liquidity team. But pretty much the idea is after the financial stuff that happened back in 2008, 2009, banks are required to hold a certain amount of cash, which is called liquidity. So the liquidity, ideally, you want it to be at a very stable level. You don't want too much liquidity because you could be investing your money in other things, and you also don't want to go below that because then you'd get in trouble, right?
Yeah.
So the job that I had was to figure out what the liquidity is, to detect any anomalies, and to make alerts to make sure that the money, the liquid amount, was as steady as possible.
Gotcha. And is this the job that makes you realize you actually don't like software engineering?
Yeah, it was. It was a very fun experience.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it also did give me more exposure to data stuff, right? Especially the machine learning stuff, because all the prediction, how it is that you detect the liquidity is by predicting people's behavior. So if you know around a certain time a trader is going to be putting in certain amounts of trades, because that's the pattern from before, you can preemptively know that, right? So you make sure that liquidity is able to account for that.
Right.
So that's kind of what got me more into the data side, and that interested me a lot more than the components of the software engineering side.
Gotcha. So at that time, is it fair to say you romanticize the data scientist role, and when you actually land a job in Meta, how is the reality different compared to what you thought data scientist job look like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I thought it was going to be a lot more like modeling. I thought it was going to be a lot of just like hands-on stuff. But in reality, there was a lot more about talking to stakeholders, just clarifying what the questions even were. I think I made like a mistake that a lot of people make when they first start off in their career. They think that the focus is on the technical stuff, when in reality the focus is actually on more of the soft skills.
Could you give us some example on, for example, what is our day-to-day like at Meta? What kind of business problem you're trying to solve, and what are your toolkits?
Yeah, so I first started off working it was called Facebook Reality Lab. Now it's called, like, I don't know what it's called.
AR something?
Yeah, the AR stuff. So I was working on Oculus at that time, which is the VR glasses, specifically on the engagement side. And that job, a lot of that was defining metrics, like figuring out what is considered to be good engagement, right? How do you measure engagement? How do you predict retention? These sorts of things. And then in terms of like toolkit, it was a lot of communicating with like non-technical people, for sure. And another thing that I realized quickly is that if you could get something done with a SQL query very quickly, you do that rather than do something very fancy with like some sort of Python stuff or like models and stuff. I would say like almost like 90% of what I did could have been solved with a SQL query. So I quickly learned that when somebody throws a problem at you, do the easiest, the scrappiest way possible in order to achieve that goal, rather than trying to come up with like an elegant solution for something.
That's a great point. And when you prepared for the interview at Meta, was it difficult because you didn't have the background in data science?
Yes. I actually had to teach myself SQL in 11 days, like from scratch, because the interview, 5 of the 7 rounds was in SQL. Because I had like a computer science degree, I didn't learn any SQL stuff or like data stuff in that degree. So I was like, oh my God, like what should I do? So I just like, I try to like learn really fast, and like I was able to pass the interview rounds for that. And on the math and probability side as well, so I didn't know anything. I knew more things, but I didn't know anything that was specific to data science. So I also like spent time learning that stuff as well.
Gotcha. So is this experience later make you feel more passionate talking about self-studying
in general? So I think that was really what opened up the door for me, realizing I'm like, this is a really useful skill to have. And I wanted to share that with people. So self-studying for me has actually always been a big part of my life. Primarily because, especially when I was younger, I was like that kid in school that just like cannot pay attention. Like I have no idea like what the teacher's talking about. I would just be distracted. I would be like that really annoying kid, you know, not paying attention and stuff. And then later when I got to college, I didn't have to go to class anymore, so I just like never went to class. So I just never went to class as well. So not suggesting that. You should definitely go to class, children. Would not recommend this. But for me, it's like even when I do go to class, I can't focus. Like I just can't concentrate. So it's like a waste of time. So what I would usually do is I would leave, like, obviously with like the teacher's permission, I would leave like a recorder, which would record the lectures. And then I would just like learn everything really, really fast before the exams. Where like before assignments, I would just like learn stuff so I'm able to do the assignments. So a lot of the things that I've done even back in school was pretty much about self-learning.
So you didn't want to focus in the classroom, but you were able to listen to the recording?
So what I would do is I would transcribe everything. At that time, we didn't have like, you know, AI transcriptions and things like that. So I would listen to a 3 times speed. And then transcribe everything down. Like the things that are there, and then just like learn everything really fast and then pass the exam.
So basically the problem is the teacher is talking too slow.
And I can't sit still. So when I'm listening to the recordings and stuff, like I would be sitting there and listening to it, or I would just be like walking around, because I feel like for me, I can't focus unless I'm like doing something else. So that's like how I would do it. Where when it became like more technical subjects, I would just kind of figure out what the assignment is, and then instead of listening, I'll be like, oh, like I don't know how to do this, and then I'll just figure out what it is that I don't know how to do, learn it so I can do the assignments. I think there's something about put our body in motion. I feel when I'm walking around, sometimes I just have more ideas, and the more I sit in front of a computer and
feeling stuck in something, the more stuck I get.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes when you're like, especially if you're staring at your code and it doesn't work, just go for a walk, come back, like, oh wow. Now it makes sense, right? Yeah, I think I definitely do that. Even now when I'm working, a lot of the times when I say I'm like working, I'm really just like walking around and thinking about stuff. Because the time it takes for me to write down things is like very short. Most of my time is spent like thinking about what it is I should be writing down.
Definitely want to talk more about best practices for self-studying and how you implement that into your Lonely Octopus programs. So while you were at Meta, did you started on YouTube? Were you doing that for fun, or you knew you were gonna be a big YouTuber?
I don't think anybody knows. Like, if you told me this like when I first started, it was like 2.5 years ago, by now that I was gonna be doing this, I would not have believed you, because it's just like it was just so like out of the blue. So I actually started YouTube right when I started my job, around that time, and it was during the pandemic at that time, so it was a combination of just being really bored. And then I also felt like I had something to share, because especially after like passing those interviews, while just self-studying to the max. So I'm like, I wanted to talk about these kind of things. As time went on, I wouldn't say I ever treated it as a hobby. I've always treated it as like pretty business-like, but I also never expected it to actually be my job at some point. So I only had one goal for myself, which is I had to make one video a week. That was it. Like, I'm just like, I'm gonna make one video a week and see what happens. And then after about like a few months, I'm like, wow, like this is actually working out. So I just kept on doing that until it became bigger, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I can actually see a future doing this.
And when you grow bigger on YouTube, you quit your job. How was the decision like?
Yeah, that was like a pretty hard decision. In all honesty, like when I was making that decision, it was definitely, I thought about it. I mean, I thought about it this way, right? Like, I have a vision for what my life is, like what I want it to be. And there's like a lot of aspects to that. But one of them is that I am somebody who really craves freedom. So not just like freedom in terms of financial freedom, although that's like a big part of it, but also freedom in the sense of like what it is that I find to be interesting. So I call that like intellectual freedom, if you will. So I want to be able to have control over like what it is that I'm working on. My like ideal, like super selfish goal is I want to, at any point in time, I want to be doing exactly what I want to be doing. That's not possible at a job. Right? At a job, you have to be doing things that you just cannot automate away or delegate to somebody else. So, and I want to have location freedom, being able to like travel and work from anywhere. I want to have time freedom. So it's like, for me, I'm pretty like particular, I would say. Like, you know how I was telling you that thing when I had like go outside and walk? It's like, you can't be like, sorry boss, like I can't come in because I have to go outside and walk for 3 hours. To be like, what's wrong with you? But now if I knew that if I work for myself, that's totally fine. Right. And I wouldn't be on call all the time. Being on call stresses me out a lot. Because even if nothing happens, I'm like, oh my God, like what if something happens?
Right. And I think after you work for yourself for a long time, you realize you're not supposed to sit somewhere for 8 hours straight. And then sometimes when the weather is nice and I couldn't go out for a walk, I feel, oh, it's such a waste of a great day. Yeah,
absolutely. So and then it's like you could go out for a walk, which actually would make you even more productive later on. So with me, I kind of just weighed that, like I have a life that I want to have. What gets me towards that goal? Is staying at a 9-to-5 get me to my goal, or is going off on myself get to my goal? And it was very clearly going off by myself gets me towards my goal. But it still took me many months to actually make that decision and quit because it was very scary.
And I think a lot of the fear lies in the financial security. So you probably have some partnership on YouTube. So how did you decide? Did you have a percentage? Oh, when I can reach 70% or 80% of my total comp in Meta, I'm gonna quit. What was the decision like?
It was so the decision point for me was, as long as the thing with YouTube is that it does fluctuate quite a lot, right, with that. But what I told myself is that I can get to like 1 month, annualized or whatever, that I can make more money doing YouTube than I can at my job, I would
Yeah.
quit. And then I got to that point. Funnily enough, right after I quit, I had a really bad time on YouTube. So all my income was like dropping. I was like, oh my God, like I made such a bad mistake. What am I going to do? I'm going to become homeless, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that's just like the nature. It will happen. Like there's going to be drops and things like that. I like to equate it by saying like a job is actually like not very safe, but it's very stable. You know exactly when it is that you're gonna get how much money, until one day you get fired or something. Then it's not very like safe. But for when you're working by yourself, it's actually the opposite. It's not very stable. Like you can't depend on a certain amount every single week or every single month, but it's much safer because you're able to diversify your incomes more. So yeah, like if I can at least see the fact that I could make enough money in this career path by surpassing what I was making at Meta, then I would quit. And then it happened. I'm like, well, I guess I have to quit now. So then I quit. Yeah.
Gotcha. And a lot of data scientists probably not going to become a YouTuber. So if someone's working a 9-to-5 job, they might have mortgages, they have kids. How do they diversify their income?
That's a really good question. Yeah. I think especially with the future of work, things that are progressing right now, not diversifying your income puts you in a very vulnerable position to be in. Because especially as many of you guys probably are aware, the tech layoffs that happened recently, like during the tech golden years, like getting a job at a big tech company is considered your life is made, right? There was a point that was the case. And then suddenly your life is completely messed up. You just suddenly, get fired or something like that, right? So in my opinion, don't quit your 9-to-5 like until there's a good reason to. Don't be like, I'm gonna quit my 9-to-5, figure it out. At least for me, like that would be very stressful if I did that. But I think the smart choice is get that 9-to-5. Maybe you're working that 9-to-5, but start taking on other things on the side. For me, it was YouTube. Nowadays, there's so many more options that are available, especially with the advent of remote work. Freelancing, for example, is a really good option. Especially if you learn like certain skill sets like AI skills. So many companies out there are looking for freelancers that know how to use these AI skills, and just learning a little bit about that and then starting that off, I think it would open up a lot of doors for you. Maybe you just have a 9-to-5 and do some freelance stuff and whatnot at the side, and you're happy doing that, right? You get to fulfill other parts and learn new things that you couldn't do at your job, and you get to make extra income. Maybe at some point you want to quit your job and just do that full time. That's fine as well. But I think it's very important to take that step and not just to think that you're safe just because you have stable income.
That's an interesting point, safe versus stable. So you mentioned AI skills. Can you give us some more specific examples? What are those AI skills? And if you have experiences working with other companies, what kind of projects are there for freelancers?
Yeah, really good question. So this actually links directly with Lonely Octopus, which is the program that I have for teaching people like data skills and AI skills. So part of that program, I myself hire people to do like some AI stuff for Lonely Octopus and like for my own content as well. But Lonely Octopus specifically also teaches people AI skills. And by that, I mean like how to use AI to build AI products, right? In terms of like a product perspective, AI is able to democratize a lot of features and a lot of things that were not accessible to smaller companies before. But now just by plugging into an API, like you're able to have so much more access to stuff. In a lot of cases, and then just tweaking the models a little bit, fine tuning it, if you will, things like that, and building AI-based apps. These are all skills that so many companies are trying to leverage now because they know how important it is. So within Lonely Octopus, one of the key components of that program is the fact that after you learn these like AI skills, these like data skills, if you would like, we actually offer real freelance projects from companies that are, honestly, it varies a lot. It goes all the way from like, smaller mom and pop healthcare shops to like moonshot startups to like mid-sized companies. It kind of varies. But what you'll notice is that like you get to learn these skills and then apply it to whatever it is that these companies are trying to build. Some of the projects that are going on that people are very interested in doing, a lot of it is like on chatbot related stuff. For example, for like self-learning, like there are lots of platforms that are on like learning platforms, right? Like think about Scratch, for example, is like self-learning. It's for like learning data science and interview prep. So they're one of those clients that we have for Lonely Octopus, and they're interested like, how do I use these AI skills in order to have a more personalized experience? So that's one of the projects that are there. Some other projects would include like doing more analytics driven stuff. So it's like, how if I have so much like qualitative data that's available, AI is a way that's able to extract insights from this qualitative data that was not available before.
Right.
So like that's really helpful. Let's see, some other projects would be like creating like interfaces so that the qualitative like data sets and things like that, you're able to get those results without investing very heavily into the technical side of things. So yeah, I can go on and on, but a lot of projects for the freelance projects are focused on like, how do I elevate my existing product, either to optimize it or to give it more functionality.
Gotcha. So it's not like you have to start everything from scratch. There is a baseline and you can learn how the system currently works and then to improve it. Do you have any specific examples of the projects?
Yeah, for Scratch, for example, we're building what we call like, we term it like the AI tutor. So it's about, so think about it like as in you have someone who's trying to learn how to do like a SQL query, right? Like trying to do an interview question that was from maybe like a tech company, and it's asking you to write a query to define this metric for ad revenue, right? And you're writing like a query for that, and you're like, I don't know how to like approach this.
Yeah.
Or you get stuck on something. So having that little tutor there, you're able to like copy paste whatever it is that you're writing and be like, hey, like, could I get a hint?
Yeah.
Right. And then the AI is able to say, oh, like, you know, have you like, you're like getting there, you're getting close to, here's a hint specific for you.
Yeah.
So something like that. In terms of the optimization front, one of the things that like is always interesting is you're looking at like unit testing, right? Like you're trying to catch like edge cases that are available in the data that you don't think about. Maybe there's like the most simplest case would be like duplicates. You forget to dedupe it. So the AI is able to create these data sets in such a fashion that's able to catch, like do this unit testing, and is able to catch the errors that people could be putting into their code that would be very labor intensive previously, because you had to like manually get someone to sit there and like think about the edge cases, right? But now you can just directly input that using AI. So yeah, that's one of them. Another one specific project is about like content creation. So especially like text-based content creation, AI has just been pretty revolutionary in that sense. So we have healthcare clinic that they want to be able to create content. So for them, you know, they're really focused on just like doing their healthcare stuff. They don't really think that much about creating content. It seems like a lot of effort for people. So now they wanted like an automated content creation kind of app, so it's able to plug into the OpenAI API. So I'm not gonna go like super technical, but it's able to like create a content based upon the prompt, and then we build an infrastructure around that like API call essentially, and it has a UI interface where the client can just look at the article and then they can either decline it or they can accept it. So and it publishes directly onto a WordPress blog. So that's like another project that we have there.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those are pretty common use cases these days. And I think the best way to learn is to do projects. And then you also have the sense of accomplishment compared to just answer some quizzes from an online course. Yeah. So I can see the value of self-studying, but once you're in a working environment, sometimes it's very hard if you are working on your own as a freelancer, because compared to working in a team in a big tech company, you can ask your coworkers or managers, looking at a lot of documentations if you run into any issue. So as a freelancer, if I get stuck in a bug, what should I do?
Well, I mean, my default answer is ChatGPT, or like some sort of, I mean, there's also like GitHub Copilot. There's a lot of like ways AI has enhanced your ability to fixing bugs and stuff. Like the way that I code now is so different now that there's like, now that I've started using artificial intelligence, because
Right.
previously I would spend so much time looking at Stack Overflow just trying to figure out a bug. Now I just go like, I just write, here's my code, here's the bug, what should I do, right?
Yeah.
And it's able to tell me these things. So it's just absolutely changed like the workflow. And I think what's also really good, that previously an issue that I would have, it's like I don't know what I don't know, right? So I'm like, I have this code and I only know this one way of approaching it, and I'm like, maybe it could be better, but I don't know how it could be better, and I wouldn't know unless I asked someone.
Yeah.
But now I can actually just go to like ChatGPT, for example, and be like, here's my code, how can I optimize this better? What are some different approaches that I can think about to write this in different ways? So it's, as a learning tool, it has been incredible, and for debugging and things like that as well. Like, with that being said though, obviously like AI cannot replace everything. You still gotta be like socialized and stuff.
Yeah.
Really important to actually talk to other freelancers, other people, having those communities.
Yeah.
I think taking that initiative is really important. That's something actually I would say Daliana, I consider her to be a mentor in that sense, because I have a tendency of sitting at home and not talking to anyone until Daliana goes like, Tina, you want to like go outside? I'm like, right, I should go outside. So it's like meeting new people. After you become a freelancer and you work for yourself, you have to spend a lot more effort and think about how you can associate with other people. While at a job, you may not have to. That's just one of the things that you will just need to do as a freelancer.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know in Lonely Octopus, you have this cohort, so you can connect with other people there when you work on some project. Say, if you are not in Lonely Octopus, or after you finish the cohort, you want to find some work on Fiverr or Upwork, what are some advice being a freelancer there to attract new contracts or network with other peers?
So I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but so I currently actually work with Fiverr, like a business kind of thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
And from that experience, I also did work with like more Fiverr like contractors, especially like AI contractors, which is also why I'm saying you should learn AI skills and do AI freelancing, because there's a huge shortage of AI freelancers there.
Yeah.
So in first of like with Lonely Octopus, for example, like definitely there's already that ecosystem that's built in. And then the problem that Lonely Octopus solves is the fact that the hardest contract to land is always your first one. So with Lonely Octopus, for example, you say you do a good job, right? We actually give freedom for the client in this case. Initially, it's all pro bono, so it's free both ways. But if they want to hire you afterwards, they're like free to do that. We don't like take a cut at anything. We're like free to hire these people if you think they're good. We just ask for them, like just give a review, start your portfolio. After you kickstart that process, it's actually, generally becomes a lot easier, because if your client thinks that you did well, they probably continue hiring you, at least to maintain the project, right? Because most technical things require maintenance, or they can recommend you to other people. Like say if you have like none of that above, to start your first one, like say on Fiverr, you're just gonna like in the beginning, unfortunately, to rank up those reviews, it really is going to be up to like the reviews that you're going to be getting from there. And do you have to start undercutting people and just doing like cheap work? Yes, you're going to have to over deliver, and that's the only way that you can make yourself stand out more. Ideally, like we all wish that we were paid like a certain amount to be fair and stuff like that, but with a platform like that, to stand out, I'm definitely not an expert on this, by the way, so like don't like quote me like on this, just from what I've noticed working with Fiverr and with the freelancers there. It is important for you to just build up that trust and portfolio with a lot of other clients, and then the harder it is that you work on doing that, the better your profile becomes, and then more Fiverr itself will also promote you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's easier if you already have a social media presence. You can share your profile, whether you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, Twitter, newsletter, etc. But what if you don't have an audience? Besides leveraging the platform like Fiverr, how do you attract more clients? How do you scale your business? Yeah, great question. So unless there's a reason that you don't have a social media following, really recommend building that portfolio. Actually, I know of a lot of people who have social media not because they want to become YouTubers, right? Or create content. It's because it's like the best form of advertising that you can get. Yeah.
It's free first of all, right? You can share your stuff that's online. You get to help other people, and that's a way for other clients to find out about you as well. Like, the easiest way I think to start is to probably start with LinkedIn, I would say. Just like start detailing the projects that you've made and then just writing about that stuff. It builds a lot of trust. So I think as you're working through it, even if you're learning on projects, right? For example, here's the thing. Again, I was talking about how for AI skills, there's just a lot of demand for it and just not enough supply at this point. Go build an app using AI tools, right? Build like a LangChain app and then just talk about it. It doesn't even need to be for an end client. Just be like, look, I use LangChain to do this and that, and then just showcase that on LinkedIn. Somebody, for example, they're like, I really want to build an app and I want to have these AI skills. They probably just like see your thing and be like, hey, like this person knows how to use LangChain.
Yeah.
They know how to use these different models. They know how to fine tune models. Then they would directly reach out to you and just be like, hey, like, do you want to work on this project? So I think a lot of, just by showcasing yourself out there, you'd be surprised how many opportunities come your way.
Yeah. And a lot of people feel they have to have a large audience to attract clients. The thing is, sometimes maybe you can just have a couple hundreds or thousands of followers, and you only need, say, 1 or 2 people who have seen your demo or your code, right? And I think another thing is always create a UI or a blog, visualize the work, because nobody's gonna go there, read your code, and everybody's visual. You need to, especially your client might be not technical, so you need to really let them see what is the outcome, what's the impact you can build for them.
Yes, absolutely so. And then they'll see it and then maybe they'll forget about it until one day they're like, oh, I need something like this. And then, I remember this person, right? Then they're like, okay, then I'll reach out to that person to see if they want to take a client. And really, it is the first step that's the hardest. After you get the first one, like I said, a lot of technical projects, it's not just a one and done kind of thing. They need maintenance, they need other stuff, and then maybe they have friends who start referring you to that. And then after that, it becomes a lot easier. That's definitely the case. And I think it's also just like really helpful to post about the things that you're doing even for yourself, because it's a way of yourself for learning. And not everybody wants to become a YouTuber, right? And like talk about their stuff. That's like mostly me. I just like talking a lot, and that's totally fine if you're not into that.
Yeah. And when you talk about AI skills, the AI skills these days, although previously AI and data science, we always talk about it together, it seems like the AI skills these days are easier to be adopted by software engineers, even if you don't know data science. And for people who don't have a background in software engineering, a lot of people feel, oh, I have to take a big Python course, learn some computer science to get started. Say, if someone knows some foundational coding or familiar with pandas, data manipulation, some SQL, but don't have a lot of software engineer skills, how do we get started in those AI skills, like you mentioned, LangChain or some other automated tools?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say like very much so. When I say AI skills now, I don't actually mean like building your AI model from scratch. Like that's like not something that is feasible for most people. In fact, even fine tuning models is not really important these days. It's really not.
Because, sorry to interrupt, a lot of large language model has gotten pretty good.
Yeah.
So you can just do prompt engineering or instruction based few shots learning. You can get pretty good results. My prediction is, I could be wrong, I think as the large language models getting better and better, in the future there'll still be companies, financial institute or healthcare, they need to fine tune their own models because of privacy. A lot of use case you can just do prompt engineering.
Prompt engineering, absolutely. So the one thing, if you don't know anything about software engineering, essentially the only thing you really need to know is how to use an API. Like that's literally it. That solves probably like 95% of your problem. And what's also really great about this, like OpenAI's API, for example, it's amazing. It literally gives you an out of the box like demo of how it is that you can use it, and it's so much easier than you would think it is. Like probably because the documentation was written by GPT-4. So that's probably why it's so good. It really is. And then because with software engineer, I actually think it's a lot easier easier in some ways than data science because there is an actual result. With data science, you can totally like screw up and then not know until like somebody tells you and you're like, oh my God, like I screwed up. But what's great about software engineering is that if it doesn't work, you get an error. Right? So if you download the code and you figure out how to use an API, that's very important. And then you run into issues, just working with AI to solve whatever bugs that come up in your code, it can go a very long way because you know what the end product deliverable is supposed to look like. So you just have to like whatever errors that you do, you may have to be a little bit more patient and try to figure those things out, and like probably learn about object-oriented programming at some point. That's pretty important as well. But after you really like start doing those kind of things, you would find that the software engineering principles themselves are not super hard to pick up. I'm not saying if we talk about like scalability and like optimization, that's when it gets hard, right? And I'm not saying that you can just very easily pick that up. And I think that's where a lot of software engineering skills, that's where the more advanced skills come in. But just to be able to build like a simple app and just be able to using those APIs, that's like, it really, the barrier of entry is really not as high as you would think it is. In fact, with Lonely Octopus as well, when I was talking to what we call them octopi, who go through the cohorts, like they are genuinely surprised because we give them the project for some of the freelance project. They're like, oh my God, this is so hard to do. Like, how can we possibly do it? And then we actually like explain to them, you know, this is actually what it is. What you realize, the infrastructure is already so out of the box. The only component really is the prompt itself that you actually have to spend time on. Most of your time is going into the prompt itself. And that's why prompt engineering is so important as a skill.
And as a data scientist, I have to say I'm guilty of not starting sooner in the software engineering skills because I feel my background in statistics and data science, I can just be very good at that and don't worry about other things. And I have this very irrational fear about using APIs and writing code. I would say now I know it's not that difficult, but because it's a new domain, so it feels very difficult for me. And I know a lot of other data scientists, sometimes they feel, oh, I can just give my model to the software engineers. They can deploy it, they can build the API. But because of this limiting mindset, we handicapped ourselves. And we have this irrational fear over something that's actually not that difficult. I think once you overcome that mental barrier, you'll realize it's actually really fun to build a little demo for your data science app. It doesn't have to be related to machine learning. It could be SQL query, some of your personal journals and notes, and it's something really fun. So if you're looking for new projects or just want to learn AI skills, I would say start with some of your own data. Maybe you want to create a tool to find your favorite Asian restaurant or something like that and get started there. Yeah,
absolutely. Like, I think the simplest way that I would describe an app is that you have to have some sort of input. Something happens to your input and then there has to be an output, right? That's it. So if you say you want to make a very simple AI app, your middle thing, so you have to somehow have an input, right? Maybe you want to build super simple, you just want to create an interface similar to ChatGPT, but you want to make the design different than ChatGPT, right? But you want to use the same ChatGPT, like GPT 3.5 or GPT-4 model. So your input for this, you can build a user interface around it so that you're able to somehow input the information, call that API, the OpenAI API, so you're inputting that into GPT, and then GPT gives you some sort of output, and you just display it somewhere. So you can do that. Really doesn't really matter what language you want. You use Python, you can use JavaScript, whatever like you want to do. If you think about it from that perspective, that's really what an app is. Everything else is just like fancy stuff you add on top of it. Maybe you want to have a database at some point because you don't want to keep calling the API because that's very expensive. Maybe you want to like feed information to it, so you're calling an API. So you have a database. That's like another component. Maybe you want to have the input so that instead of you having to type it in, maybe you want to have it like as a upload file, right? Where on your output, you're like, this is ugly. Like maybe I wanted to make it prettier. All of this is like additional things on top of it. But the very, very core simple part for what we call an AI product is pretty much just like some sort of input through that API to GPT, some sort of output showcasing the output of GPT. That's it. Yeah.
And previously, we talked about sometimes when we want to learn a new skill, we have a lot of fears. I think those feelings and emotions also come up a lot in the self-study journey. What are some common mistakes people make when they self-study?
Oh, I actually did do a video on this. Yeah, like I think, so just quite briefly without going into like too much detail about this. Well, the first one is that they just never start. They're like, oh my God, this is too hard. Like I can't do it.
Yeah.
My favorite solution to doing this is a little bit extreme. So I'm not going to say like everybody do this.
Yeah.
I like to force myself into situations where I don't have a choice.
How do you force yourself?
Like for example, I would offer like, say like I would, in the beginning, I only knew a little bit of Python, and then I really wanted to learn how to code, right? So what I did was I got a job in bioinformatics, and I had to learn how to code, because if I don't learn how to code, I can't do my job and they're going to fire me.
Yeah.
So that forced me to do that. Other things I like to do is I like to use social accountability a lot. Like I would publicly say I'm going to do something, and then if I don't do it, then I'm going to feel very embarrassed, so then I have to do it. Signing up for certain programs also helps. Like for example, if I wanted to learn something, and if I signed up, if I just buy like a $10 course, I'd be like, whatever, right? Like I'm probably just gonna my graveyard of courses.
Yeah.
But if I sign up for a more expensive program, that obviously comes with financial decision, things like that, but it's making some sort of investment also makes a really big difference.
Right.
For me, it really does honestly come down more to like social accountability is a big one for me. So if I tell Daliana, I'm going to do this, and then I don't do it, then I'm going to feel really bad.
Yeah.
So, and then I have to do it. Other like traps that people fall into is that they get too caught up on these specifics. Like instead of, say you want to build that app we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
That interface and then just the API call. They're like, oh my God, but like I don't know HTML, I don't know JavaScript, how do I make it look pretty? Where I don't know Django to make it look pretty. Where they're like, oh, like what about the input stuff that's coming in over here? Like how do I make sure it's secure? How do I do this? And then you go like down a rabbit hole trying to optimize things without actually building out the full thing first.
Yeah.
I call this like breadth versus depth approach. You always want to go by breadth. Like get an MVP, get like the shittiest version possible out first, and then you fix it, as opposed to trying to craft like the most perfect thing. You'll probably give up at some point.
Yeah, completion over perfection.
Yes, exactly. Just get the thing out, and then you're like, this is terrible, let me fix it now.
Yeah. And I think now it doesn't really matter what kind of software you use. The most important thing is to quickly learn something. And as a data scientist, we have to build a plane while we're flying it. Yeah,
very much so. It's like you get a project and you're like, I have no idea what's happening. So, but the thing is, I don't think that changes per se. Like that's like the mindset that you always need to have, and I think it's a success. That's what a successful mindset is. You can be like, I don't know what's happening, but I have the confidence that I can figure it out.
Yeah,
that's the important part.
Yeah. And how do you get that confidence that I'll figure it out?
By forcing myself into many of these situations.
Yeah.
Right? Because after I self-learned like SQL in 11 days, I'm like, wow, I could, like, that was terrible. Would not recommend. Right? I was like a terrible experience.
Yeah.
See, this is what I mean, right? I forced myself to learn SQL in 11 days because I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I like the idea of going to an interview and then failing it because I didn't know any SQL was both embarrassing and I wouldn't have a job.
Right.
So that forced me to apply these skills and learn it. So, but then after I do this many times, I'm like, well, I did it before and I could figure it out. So there's no reason why I can't do it again.
Yeah.
So over time, you build that confidence up.
Yeah, that's a great point. You build confidence by start doing something that you didn't think you can do. It can be something very small, maybe just write one line of code, hello world, in a language you want to learn. And that's something, some small accomplishment that it can be just a tiny step towards your end goal. And I have a similar story about learning Python. So I studied statistics in grad school and we primarily use R. And while I was at Amazon, I proposed to build a machine learning model in my previous team. And everybody was using R at the time. And I've decided I'm going to use Python to do this project because most machine learning libraries are in Python. I just told my manager I'm going to deliver this in 3 months. So in the beginning, how you load libraries is so different. I remember when I imported a CSV file, I just felt it's a huge win for me. And did I become a expert Python developer? Did I know how to do like leak code or data structure? No, but I was able to just Google whatever I needed for that project. And that's how I learned Python. I think eventually, if I want to improve, I do need to take a more structured course, but at least that helped me get through the initial inertia, so I don't have to always be in my mind, oh my God, what if I can't learn it? And is this the right tutorial? Because I committed to the deadline, I have to Google and whatever it takes to get there. It is stressful, but sometimes I think it's good to have a little bit of stress in your life to motivate yourself to get there. Social pressure, right? I think when we do projects, I always told my mentees to schedule a time for a presentation. It doesn't have to be the end of the project. It could be mid-project check-in. So it forces yourself to time box your strategies, because for data science projects, there's always more to do. You can always improve 0.1%. But if you put a time box in it, it forces yourself to make decisions and create a presentation. It's good for you to get feedback from your stakeholders and also a little bit of accountability for yourself. And we talk about freelancing. I think you don't have that kind of social environment. It's more important for you to figure out ways to be accountable. Yeah.
Here's like something that I would suggest. This is also just from like in terms of freelance. Say you're starting off, right? Like don't go charging people, right? If you don't have the skills. I'm like a huge believer in paying people. I don't believe in like free internships and things like that. But the whole concept is that if you provide value to someone, then you should earn what you're worth, right? But if you don't provide value for people, you should not earn what you're worth. That's like a very simple belief that I have. So like say you're starting off and you want to start off as a freelancer, right? Like, oh my God, this is too hard. Like, I don't know what to do. And you're like have inertia and stuff, just like go up to someone, like I'm sure probably have friends where like somebody, right? And just be like, hey, like I'm gonna build this thing for you for free, right? I'm gonna give it to you in 3 weeks, right? If you like it, you can keep it. That's it. Or just approach like some sort of business where somebody, they're not going to say no in most cases, because they're like, I love free stuff, right? Worst case scenario is that you don't like, that's it. That's like you don't deliver where they don't like it, so they don't really care from that aspect, so they'll say yes. That gives you social pressure now, right? Because you said you're going to do it. At least for most people, in terms of cognitive dissonance, if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, and you see yourself as someone who is a reliable person, you're going to have that pressure now. That's how you're going to get yourself to have that pressure in the end. And then you know that the worst case scenario is build a thing and it's like not good, and the person just goes like, hey, like I'm not going to use it. So what, right? Best case scenario, they're like, this is amazing, let's adopt it. Hey, let's also talk about contracting, I want you to pay you. I feel like in almost all cases, like business owners and like other people, stakeholders, there's like this concept of reciprocity. So if you provide some value to them, they're probably, if they actually think it's useful, they will be like, hey, like I want to pay you for your work. I want you to work with me. Negotiating is, it's art in itself, but generally speaking, that's the case. And I think that's a great way to start doing like freelancing, for example.
And previously you mentioned in Lonely Octopus you have this score system to keep each other accountable. Can you tell us more about it? How does it work?
So Lonely Octopus is really like my baby in a lot of ways. A lot of it is because I struggle so much with being consistent, because I'm so like can't focus, like I'm like very not disciplined. So I essentially built Lonely Octopus around all of my problems.
Okay, tell us about your problems.
I have so many problems. I don't even know where to get started. But pretty much, I'm like, if I say I'm gonna do something and I don't commit to it to another person, I don't force myself to do it, I'm just like gonna not do it. I already know myself. That's just like unfortunately the way that I am. So the scoreboard system and like the accountability system that's built in, so we do have like engagement based system. So every time we group you into people, and then that's your social accountability. And then you tell your group of people, hey, like you make your own goals. Like we don't tell you what your goals are. You're like, I'm gonna work on this project for 6 hours this week, right? And then that's what you put in. Your group holds you accountable. Next week later, they're like, did you do it? So usually what happens is people go like, I said I was going to do it. I don't want to embarrass myself in front of my octopod, we call it, my other octopi. So then they set that goal and then they would usually accomplish that goal. So there's like that accountability system that's built in. Also, like there's a reward system that's built in as well. By consistently studying, what we reward people on is not actually based upon achievement. It's based upon consistency.
Gotcha.
So what I mean by this, like say you're going to work like 10 hours, you say you're going to work 10 hours and you work 10 hours, that's like 100% completion, right? So you get the full amount. But if you say you want to do like 3 hours and you complete 3 hours, that's still the same amount. Because and then in terms of like studying and stuff, it's not really about like how many hours you put in. It's more about like saying you're going to do something and consistently doing it week by week. So when you do consistently study, when you engage with the community, you get like a coinage system. We call them sand dollars that you would get. And then you can trade these sand dollars for different projects or like things like that you want to do. So this there's like a lot more that goes into this, but the concept of it is pretty much like I built Lonely Octopus to solve my own problems, to get myself to do things. And then also it encompasses a lot of my personal belief that creating independent sources of income is extremely important, which is why we have that freelance component. Because my goal is, after it's like 8-week program right now, like I'm not gonna, like I don't have the expectation that everybody's gonna suddenly like, you know, become a freelancer and just become like have all these things. But what I want people to get from that program is to develop the habit of self-studying and to develop that habit of getting started. Now you have your first freelance project under your belt. If you're really good, the client may be reaching out to you and talking to you about it later. Maybe it doesn't work out and that's fine, but at least you made the first step.
Yeah. And I think your struggles, your flaws probably resonate with a lot of people. Actually, I just had this idea today because sometimes when I see someone else sharing productivity tips, accountability tips, it just makes me feel so bad because sometimes I can be very unproductive. I procrastinate a lot. And then I realized I also shared something that works for me. I think the people who think about productivity a lot are actually the people who struggle the most.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So if you see someone sharing like productivity tips, you don't need to feel bad about it. The people who talk about it usually struggling a lot. And then when we talk about our win about being productive for a day, we probably have another 5 or 10 days procrastinate and being unproductive. So
yeah, absolutely. Like 80% of my channel is dedicated to getting myself to do stuff. Yeah. That's because I can't get myself to do stuff. Yeah. It really is so.
Yeah. So even if you are on a journey to try to be more productive, more organized, and then even if you fail, you should continue to try it. It's like working out, just get more reps. And sometimes I think I forget how to get started, but the more I practice, there are some questions I ask myself, okay, is this thing gonna get easier when I do it later? I find it's very useful for me. So now I ask myself this question, but there are days I forget this question. I just procrastinate for the entire morning and feel bad about myself. Yeah, that happens to every one of us. And so you talked about building this system for yourself. And what are some success stories you have for people who are using this system?
Yeah, for sure. So this is technically it's the first official cohort because we had the beta cohort from before. So we did have people who land a couple jobs from this. Yeah. And then we're currently running the freelance projects right now. And there's people who actually came back specifically to learn the AI skills as well. So in terms of the freelance project component is actually new for this cohort. So I'm really excited to see how people are doing. As we're filming, this is when they're actually working on freelance projects. So I'm really excited. Maybe I can give an update about it later, how that turns out and how that works out. But yeah, from the past, it's helped people kickstart their journey. I think, our retention rate was actually 92%, which is super high. Yeah, so everybody that went through that program, they felt like they were able to develop like a certain habit or kickstart their journey. Did have a couple people who landed jobs after that as well. And yeah, I'm just like, I was honestly so inspired myself just by the fact that like you'll be surprised how much your life can change in like 6 to 8 weeks. It's just so crazy once you decide to do something and you really commit to doing it. things can change so quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do they quit their job to find freelance work, or they have their full-time job and doing freelance? So when someone think about diversify their income stream, what do you think about the structure, the model? Is it like binary? I'm either a full-time employee somewhere, or I'm a freelancer, or are there something in the middle? Is it like a spectrum?
It's definitely a spectrum. I would not recommend anybody quitting their full-time job. If you get laid off, that's like another story. But if you have a full-time job right now and that's like, consider yourself very lucky, because honestly, the economy wise, like, it's not great right now. But if you do have a full-time job right now, like, utilize that, like, use that as a safety net, and then start building up the freelancing stuff from the side. And then at some point, like, you can maybe start a YouTube channel if you're into content. Just start like investing in building out these other things, because it takes time to grow.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you also didn't get your full-time job just like suddenly. You probably went to school for many years to land this job. So it's only fair to say that if you're growing something on the side, it's also going to take time, and you're supposed to nurture it. At some point, I think the decision point will come if you continue doing this, where you can make that decision. Do I want to do this? Just do a lot of freelance jobs full time? Do I want to do that? Become my own boss or start my own business? And I think for some people, like, it's like the answer is yes. Like, this is what I've always wanted to do. That was the case for me. But also there are many people that I know.
Yeah.
They just do their full-time job, but they're really happy doing that, and it satisfies like 60% of their needs.
Yeah.
And the rest of the needs that they have, when they want to learn new things, when they get bored of like not learning new technologies at their full-time job, they just take on freelance jobs on the side. And that's like a perfectly sustainable model as well.
Yeah, for example, I know another YouTuber in a data science engineering domain. I asked her, do you want to be a full-time creator or have your own thing? She said, I actually love working in a big tech company, and I'm just going to grow my YouTube as a hobby. So I don't think there's a standard path for everyone. It has to work for your own personality, your own financial situations. I think the best way to try something a little bit low stake and see whether you like it, and then just kind of iterate.
Yep, absolutely. It really is the case. Like, when I first started YouTube, I wasn't like, I think I'm going to quit my job in 2 years to pursue this full time. It was not the case at all. I was just like, I think I'm going to start making videos, and I'm just going to keep doing it, see what happens. And it led me to now. And yeah, like, looking back now, it makes sense. But when I was looking forward, I didn't really think that much about it.
Yeah. And what do you think about the future of work?
Great question. I would say there's a few large factors that are converging right now, and it's a very fascinating time to be living in. Very interesting. So the first one, at least, you know, in terms of the US, North America in general right now, economy is not great. Like, that's not news to everybody right now, especially in the tech space, where it used to be like such a resilient industry. We really got hit with the layoffs and stuff like that. And I think that was a wake-up call for a lot of people. And this isn't like a one-time thing, right? Like, it's a continuous layoff situation. So we know that's happening. Two other factors. Another factor is that remote work. During the pandemic, there was a huge push towards remote work. And even now, people are returned to their office. But you've noticed that most places usually allow you to still only have to go to the office like a couple days a week or something like that, right? So it's like the structure of it has changed. Remote work is a lot more accepted now in a lot of places. And the third one is AI. The advent of AI was so huge. Like, it really revolutionized a lot of industries and domains. Like, that's why so many companies right now are trying to incorporate AI into their stuff. That's why like AI companies are being funded like that. I would say it's like distinctly different from crypto, because crypto and blockchain at that time, it was very like, oh my God, everybody's talking about it, but it wasn't being massively adopted. AI is being massively adopted. So with these like three factors converging together, it is a very fascinating situation, because I think we can already see this. Actually, it's not just me thinking it. We can already see it happening. The advent of the freelancer, or what they call like gig employee, like people who do things that are not like full-time, is becoming really, really advantageous right now. Like, so many people, more and more so, if they have specific skill sets and they go off on their own, because there's so much more, like the economy is not doing great, so people are laying off, companies are laying off people, but then somebody still has to do the work, right? So they generally hire freelancers to take that place. You can become one of those freelancers, and you can also negotiate working remotely because that's more widely accepted now. On top of that, especially with the AI stuff that's coming in, you as a remote worker who understands how to incorporate AI into companies, that's like a gold mine for companies, because if you know that you come in as a freelancer, you can probably do as much work as 2 employees, full-time employees that they had previously. So by offering that amount of value to an employee, you're also able to charge at a rate that is justified to the value that you're offering. So that's in terms of is what I'm seeing. I'm not going to comment on like fields that I'm not familiar with, but I would say at least from like a technical standpoint, and in tech in particular, or like companies that have like software engineers, like technical employees, I definitely am seeing this happening.
And I think from the domain of data science or machine learning engineering, sometimes the skill set requires you need to know how to deploy a model at scale, or learn how to build an app that could serve millions of customers, and you don't learn those type of skills on your own. Usually you can only have those experiences from large companies. So when it comes to those type of skills, what's your advice in acquiring and improving in those levels?
Yeah, absolutely. At your current job, if you have that ability, if you currently have a job right now, try to get yourself these opportunities. Right? Show some sort of demo. Generally, if you're trying to convince like somebody who holds money for you to do something, show them a demo of it. They're like, look at this. Here's what I've already done. If you can extend your budget by this amount, this is the things that I can accomplish for you, right? Show them like a breakdown of an analysis that makes sense. And then a lot of times, if you're like, hey, this is really high ROI, you don't have to invest too much money and you get lots of return on investment, whoever it is who is holding the purse strings is probably going to say yes, or like try for it, right? I find that just sometimes just doing that, like just showcasing something and presenting that as a proposal at your current company is a great way of acquiring those skills. I would also say going to like conferences on those topics, like meeting people who are in that realm is also really helpful. On the freelancing side, I feel like I don't think I'm the best person to comment about this because I don't actually work with larger companies. When it comes to that, usually like mid-sized to startups and like more, I would say like traditional businesses where it's easy to optimize using technology. So I don't think I'm the best person there. But I would imagine if you have that skill set that you learn and you're showcasing that, other companies will eventually find you and see that, hey, this person has that skill set. Like then you can start becoming like a specialist in that. Like I know some people who are very specialized in very specific things that are very helpful. Like for example, just deploying a very specific type of model at scale is like what they're specialized in, and lots of companies will pay them a lot of money just to do that specific thing.
I think you made a great point. If you want to practice how to get a new client, you can use your current company as to try it out, because if you're working in a large organization and there are a lot of projects in the backlog, and then of course on the condition that your current job, you're doing well, your manager, your team is satisfied, and you can pick a pet project, and then you learn how to pitch, how to convince people. I think that's a great wrap to prepare yourself for freelance work.
Absolutely.
And recently I also published an episode interview Max Pamperla. He's a data science professor, works as a freelancer, as software engineer and data scientist. He's based in Germany. He got his first remote job on Twitter. So basically, he's an open source contributor. And I think open source is also a great way to build your profile. And even if you're not open source contributor, like Tina mentioned, you can write a blog post, post it on LinkedIn, have somewhere where people can see your portfolio. And it doesn't have to be, say, 3-5 projects. It could be just one project that you did really well. Just give people a reason to find you and know your capabilities. So yeah, he saw someone tweeted, oh, we're looking for someone to build a model, build a solution, and he just DM'd this person. So sometimes you just need to be proactive. I think the landscape for a future of work is changing, and also how we find work also changed. I know so many people, they got jobs without using their resume. For example, I got my recent job because someone I interviewed on my podcast introduced to the CEO of our company, and we have the chat. Of course, I went through the interview process, but this is not a traditional job search opportunity.
Yeah. So 2 of the 3 employees that I have right now, they just reached out to me.
Okay.
Yeah, like I hired from my community.
Right.
Like they were just like, I think one of the people, like they were great, like especially with Ibrahim. So he's a growth engineer on my team right now. We started working way back, and what he did was amazing. He was just like, hey Tina, I saw this thing, I just built it for you, here you go. And I'm like, wow, this is great. Like, why don't you come on board and you can build more of this thing?
See?
Yeah, like it really is like that. Sometimes all it takes, like, don't ask. That's another thing. Just be like, can I work on this thing? Instead of just doing that, just do it.
Yeah.
Just be like, look, I made it, right? And then maybe like, is it going to be perfect and fit their specs completely? Absolutely not. But they'll be like, oh, like you already made that initiative and it's kind of there already.
Yeah.
So it's like, instead of asking like, hey Tina, like can I work for you on this, it's much better if you just do it. And I'm just like, oh, this looks good.
Yeah, they already have something to show you instead of say, hey, can I build this for you? And also maybe someone on paper, they're more experienced than this person, but you never talked to them, you never worked with them. And this person, they didn't showcase a small demo, but also show their passion. So they're not a random person. They probably watch some video, they have some business contacts, and I think the passion, the interest you show for your client is also very interesting. And make sure it's just like you want to customize your resume for different employer, and when you talk to different client, you also want to customize your pitch to their domain.
Yeah, like right now, for example, like as someone who's running like a small business, I'm looking for someone in marketing. So if anybody's there, please reach out in some way. Like something, marketing is my weakest point, it has always been my weakest point. And as much as I would like to say you can build a great product, people will come, but they don't. So like, for example, like for Lonely Octopus, I was very bad at marketing. I just dropped it like and didn't give people enough time to sign up, all these different things, right? So I'm very glad I went through that experience because I didn't know that I didn't know. But now I'm like, oh, wow, like I need to actually invest in that. So now I'm looking for someone to do marketing. And if somebody just goes like, hey, Tina, look, I built this funnel for you for Lonely Octopus. We're like, you know, Tina, like here's an email chain, you should do that. And I'll be like, oh, wow, amazing. Like and then I'll be like, hey, do you want to just come up with a strategy, we'll work together. And I think a lot of small businesses do this now as well, because it's like less downside for it. I usually hire people as contractors. So 2 of my employees right now became full-time employees for me, and they all started as contractors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. That's super interesting because you started your career as an independent contributor, I see, and now you're an entrepreneur, you manage people. What are something you learned in this process? For example, looking back your own career, what are something you wish you could have realized earlier?
You mean in terms of the management side of things, or?
Yeah, management, or for example, now you can see how other contractors work with you, and then looking back, what are something you wish you knew earlier?
Oh yeah. Now I'm looking back, I'm like, damn, I was so annoying. No, in all seriousness, I'm just like, these people, like I'm so impressed by their work because I'm just like, I think I was like definitely way more annoying. Like,
what do you mean by annoying?
Okay, maybe annoying isn't the right word. Like I feel like I was not as independent as these people who work with me now are, and I'm so impressed by them all the time. So okay, let's say it a different way. Something that I wish that I did. I wish I spent more time on understanding my end client. Whether that be like a stakeholder or understanding something else. And this is also something that I witnessed like over and over again with our Octopi who are working with freelance clients, right? Yeah. There's like, from an IC perspective, you're always more obsessed with building the product or like the thing that you're going to do, and you get really caught up on that, that you don't think to remember what it is that you're doing it for. Like, why does it actually matter to the end client?
Right.
Instead of just jumping into doing something, think about it from their perspective. Like, why do they care? A really great example I think I can give, for exactly like for one of the freelance projects that we're doing, it's like a team of people coming in and they're like, oh, like we need to build like this MVP product. They got like super obsessed with the technical aspects of it, like with building out the structure, like the more like the engineering side of things, right? But what they fail to understand from the beginning is that this client has a bunch of software engineers already. Your MVP that you build, he doesn't care about like how good the engineering part of it is, how optimized it is, how great the UI is. The reason why he's hiring you guys is because you're people who learned about how to use AI skills. Like they can all call an API, but what they don't know how to do is to craft a good prompt. So they needed to understand the value from that perspective. Like what do these people, like what does your end client actually care about? What value do you bring to them? And go really hard on the value that you bring, and don't spend so much time on things that to them doesn't really matter. To you think it's very important, but to them, like for example, this client, he doesn't care if like the UI doesn't look very nice and it doesn't really work, because if you have a good prompt and you give that prompt to him, he has great engineers who can make it work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of times we stuck in our own mind. We have those assumptions. Maybe I think the UI needs to be pretty, and then I have this projection on the client. They might think it's important. I think if you are not sure about something, always ask. That's why I was curious, what do you mean by annoying? Because in my mind, I think it's good to be quote unquote annoying. You want to always clarify what is the priority. If you're not sure about something, just ask. I think this is something I learned in my career, because growing up in China, I think sometimes maybe it's my parents get annoyed if I ask very stupid question, and sometimes they expect you to figure things out on your own and don't bother them, just bring the end results. As I started kind of my professional career, I realized that's not how it works. And if my manager would rather me being annoying, ping them 100 times asking clarifying questions than me just guess their request. Of course, you don't want to ask stupid questions that they already said 100 times or in the documentation. So basically, I think communication, especially in the beginning, is very important.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to clarify that. Annoying, I don't mean as in like bothering people. Like what scares me the most is when people don't communicate with me, because then I don't know what's happening, right? Then I'm like, what are you thinking? Like I'm just like, I have no idea what's happening with this person. I want to help them, but I don't know what the problem is. And what's worse, the worst case when I work with freelancers is that they show up like 3 weeks later with something that's like, that's not what I wanted, right? And I couldn't tell you that because you never asked me, and you never were able to do that. When I say annoying, it was more in the sense of like being like too caught up in their heads. Like for me, when I first started, I was like, I have to like exactly make the best model ever. And then I realized I'm like, they actually just wanted a SQL query. I'm like, damn. That's what I meant. Like it's like being so caught up in like the things that you think are important. In most cases, it's like not really the case at all. Like the easiest way, it's hard to like get out of your own head, but the easiest way to do this is literally just to go up to your client and be like, hey, like where do I offer you the most value, right? Where like the best thing is like you come up with something first, because sometimes when you ask people as well, it's like too vague, right? If you ask people like, what kind of person are you looking for? They'd be like, oh, I would like a person who like is independent. It's like, what does that even mean? But what you can do is that you come up, say like, what we instruct people to do is like come up with a proposal first, right? Based upon what you know about the project. Your proposal is probably going to be pretty off, right? But you give them something to show for it, and then they can tell you exactly. They're like, oh, we care about this part, maybe that part, with this part, with that part. Just like talking about things is too abstract.
That's a great point. So if you ask people what do they want, they usually don't know. But if you give them something they can work with, even if it's really bad, it's not the thing they want. At least you know what they don't want.
Exactly, what they don't want. That's the biggest thing. Like at least you know what they don't want.
I remember there was a project. We are building a machine learning model, but our customer want to have the output in a specific format. And in the beginning, we just write things down in a document, kind of like a product document. And later on, I think there's a lot of confusion around it. So what I did was basically show them like an Excel table. Is this something you want? And then I feel their eyes all of a sudden lit up. and they're like, oh, I actually want to put a column like this, a cell like that. Yes. When they can visualize things, they give us more specific feedback. So if you, that's actually a very important point when you work on new project. If you feel your stakeholder, if you don't know what your stakeholder want, give them something to work with. Always propose with some demo, and don't worry if it's wrong, because most likely it is going to be wrong.
Yeah.
But you need to, it's just for them to come up with something from 0 to 1 is so much harder than you give them something to work with. It's just easier to be an editor than a writer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely so.
Yeah. And when you were a data scientist at Meta, your struggle was, oh, I don't have control of my time. I'm assigned to do the things I'm not passionate about. And now you are an entrepreneur. You are a content creator. You have a lot of freedom over your time, but you might have different type of stress. So what kind of struggle or stress you have right now?
I have so many struggles and stress. Where should I start? Is this therapy session?
Yeah. Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah. So at Meta, it was struggle with like things that I think are not like, it's things that I think are not important, where there's like not enough visibility into stuff. I'm like, I don't want to do this. Like that was the problem before. Now, you know, when people say I'm an entrepreneur, I always like get really confused, because I guess I am technically, but I don't really see myself like that. So I'm not really sure. Like, I guess in my head, my idea of an entrepreneur is like not like me. But anyways, sorry, that's like a different what kind of struggles do I have? So the struggles that I have now is really the opposite. I have too much time. Like I need to put structure back into my life.
Yeah.
So like something that I've been really bad at doing is like these live streams I used to do with Study with Tina, in which I'll be studying or working on something. That was very helpful because it forces me to get up to do stuff.
Yeah.
I really, really, really need to start doing that again. So structure is a huge thing I struggle with. And then prioritization is a huge thing. Before, I didn't like it when people told me like what's important, what's not important. But now I have to figure it out myself. And then not only that, like people ask me what's important, what's not important. I'm just like, I don't even know. Like, and then I have to like, you know, figure it out so I can tell them.
Right.
So that takes up like a lot of time. Something else is like that is a struggle currently is this. Yeah, like I would say there's a few things. Another one is just, oh my God, it's literally therapy. Another thing is like, I know like right now, like building Lonely Octopus, and I'm kind of like blind. I'm just kind of just trying to figure it out along the way. And I kind of know things based upon stuff that I learned from courses, or I learned from like reading books mostly. I'm not a very sociable person, so I struggle with figuring out things that are outside my domain. So I struggle with like meeting people that are able to talk about things that I'm interested in, that are doing similar things to me.
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean when I say I feel like I'm not really like an entrepreneur in that sense, because at least like in Silicon Valley, like tech entrepreneurs is very much the kind that you have like this thing, you get funding for it, and then it's a high growth stage, whatever, right? You either exactly and then you never actually turn a profit or anything like that. You're like, maybe you get acquired or something like that. And I feel like that like mindset is very different than what I'm trying to do. So when I talk to people like that, it just doesn't really like resonate that much. And then or if I talk to like small business owners, that doesn't really resonate either, because like brick and mortar, they're like, yes, like, you know, your cost that's coming in, like, you know, I'm just like, it also isn't quite right. So, and people like in content creators are probably the closest. So I call myself like, I don't know, call it creatorpreneur, like creator entrepreneur, in which I have like an audience that I've built up, and then I start doing like projects that are related to the things that I talk about. So it's been a struggle like finding people specifically to talk about this kind of stuff with. And then I would say like my last biggest struggle is trying to manage my own time between being a manager and being like a IC, right? Because I still make videos. That's like one of my favorite thing to do is really like making YouTube videos. That's like my first love. And then with like Lonely Octopus, like being able to help these people, like, and that's like that kind of adds on to that, because I'm able to like use these ideas. Like they found me first through my YouTube channel, right? So, and that's like another part of like the whole philosophy, I guess you want to call it, that's there. And then what I mean by that is like I'm very much still an individual contributor in the sense of making my videos and stuff. It's pretty much just me and my editor, like, and I come up with all my ideas. I do all these things. And with Lonely Octopus is more of like on a management role where I'm asking people to do certain things and keep holding people accountable to doing stuff. So trying to manage that is hard because to carve out like the amount of time to think about what I'm going to be writing for content and actually make good videos, I need to like not talk to anyone. I need to not have any interruptions. But being a manager, part of being that is like you have to respond to people or else you end up blocking people and their stuff. So it's always that constant struggle between like how do I manage to do both at the same time. And oftentimes my content ends up suffering and it makes me feel very sad because I'm dealing with like trying to like get back to people on time. And by the time that I finish doing that, I'm too tired to actually work on the IC stuff.
So now with all the AI tools, you can create an AI avatar for yourself. So if that's struggling, do you feel you enjoy actually being a creator, being IC, creating videos, or you see this as a platform, a business you want to automate and scale everything?
I would say it's more of the former. Like I like to see myself, like with the stuff that I talk about, I like to see it as like, I don't know if it's like philosophy is the right term, but like the way that I view life per se is like how I see myself, and I'm constantly trying to improve. And that creator journey for me is about like showcasing the things that I learned, the things that I struggle with, and then just bringing that on to like other people, right? And Lonely Octopus is an extension of that because I sit around talking all this time about like self-learning things, right? AI skills, working on projects, like, you know, elevating your career. I talk about all these things. Lonely Octopus is the implementation of things I talk about. If that makes sense. So it's like an overarching philosophy, I guess, of like how I think that my life is heading, the things that I figure out. And as I'm talking about it, I want to make that philosophy more available for other people. So I do things like projects like Lonely Octopus or like courses that are implementations and more of deep dives into the things I talk about.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, when you say Lonely Octopus is production of your own journey of your career and your self-learning, in my mind, Lonely Octopus is like this AGI in the form of octopus and it has the knowledge from Tina and then now use the platform, basically scale a lot of Tina to help other people to learn new things, especially in data science, engineering, and AI.
So I was the first Lonely Octopus. So that's why I started it, because I really wanted to have friends.
Right, so everybody can be lonely together.
Yeah, you become not lonely after you join. I think. Yeah, absolutely so. Like, absolutely so. That's why it's like really the implementation of that. And then it's also a way for me to learn so much as well. Like my entire process, like the thing I like doing is I like talking about stuff, but how do I have stuff to talk about? I learn things, right? So like pretty much my cycle is learn about things, talk about things, and then like implement that. So when I'm going through like learning from people in Lonely Octopus, I'm so surprised by so many things that I wasn't aware of, and I incorporate that into my videos as well.
And from a business perspective, so for example, people might be wondering, with 500k followers, do you make enough money from YouTube to live in San Francisco? Is it from YouTube or sponsorship or Lonely Octopus? So how does the business side of things work?
Yeah, sure. The breakdown. Yeah, I'm pretty open to this kind of stuff. So in terms of like, yes, it's enough. I make more right now than I did working at Meta, and but it's not through like one stream, and it does fluctuate dramatically, especially on the YouTube side. It fluctuates a lot. I don't know. Some people are just like, Tina's not cool today, so we're not going to watch her for a month. I don't know. Hopefully, like, you know, will remain relatively relevant as for a while at least. So I would say most of my income is still coming from the YouTube side still. So most of it is actually like sponsorships that are coming in. So ad revenue doesn't do that well for me. It used to do a lot better when I was talking about more technical subjects, but now not so much. So it's from like sponsorships. I also do like freelancing stuff on the side as well myself. So I don't really talk about it as much. But I first started doing that as like a way to support myself, because when when I was like quitting my job, especially, I'm like, oh my God, like what if like everything becomes, I become homeless.
Yeah.
So I do like this kind of stuff. So like technical freelancing things that I do. I also did like, people seem to like it when I combine the technical with the video stuff.
Okay.
So that's like seems to be like a specific skill set. So I do that stuff as well. And then so I would say those account for like the majority of my income right now.
Yeah.
Revenue. And then in terms of Lonely Octopus, honestly, it's not making me any money right now. It's like very much everything I make goes straight back into Lonely Octopus. And I actually take like YouTube income in particular and put it into Lonely Octopus because I did hire people and there's that financial part that's there, like in terms of on the development side as well. So that I'm hoping at some point though that Lonely Octopus would become a significant driver of the business. And so my income doesn't rest so heavily on like the views that I get and sponsors anymore, because that's like pretty stressful.
It is.
Definitely, because I can't control that, right? Every video I make I think is great, because like I'm the kind of person, I'm pretty like obsessive in the content that I create. I think it's great, but like, you know, it just doesn't do well for some reason. And because it doesn't do well, the sponsor get upset at me, things like that. So I would, from a pure like business perspective, I'm hoping to diversify my income such that Lonely Octopus will become a primary driver of my income in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for being transparent. I know a lot of people feel, oh, if I be a YouTuber, that would be so fun. I get paid making videos. But then you're still working for someone. You're working for an audience. You're working for your sponsor. It's a different type of measurement for success and different type of stress. So when it comes to content creation, you need to create something your audience are interested in. You probably would do some research on what are some other current trends in data science engineering career. You also need to make sure your sponsors like it, and I'm sure there are also topics you feel, oh, I don't know whether other people are interested, but I'm so passionate about it. So how do you balance those topics? Do you have a distribution you follow?
For a data scientist, I'm surprisingly not data driven when it comes to my topics. So like, do I know there's certain things that people like to hear me talk about? Yes, right? Especially when I talk about like self-learning tips and stuff. Like people, I know that's like a video that will do relatively well. I know the sponsors will be happy. Everything's like PG, everything's great. Not that I don't really like touch on non-PG things anyway. But it's like stuff like that I know would be good. For me, like my process, I'm honestly pretty chaotic. My creative, I would say I'm a person that's like, I default to chaos. Like if you just leave me by myself, I will like become chaos very, very quickly. My creation process, that's like, so I'm just like, I read a book or something. I'm going to make a video that has Barbie in it because I watched a Barbie movie and I just suddenly decide, I'm like, I think I'm going to do this now. Like that's literally my process. And then if I can't like think of anything, I mean, I've never actually had an issue with thinking about topics. Like a lot of the stuff that I talk about is just based upon the things that I read, the stuff that I see, and the things that I do. Like when ChatGPT first came out, I spent a lot of time prompt engineering and like using it as self-learning. So I'm like, oh, I should make a video on it because I just did that. Right. And I watched a Barbie movie and I'm like, oh, like this actually inspired me to, there's like an effect, it's called like persona effect or something like that. Like the concept of Barbie is super interesting because they have one Barbie and there's like implementations of different types of Barbies, right? Anyways, I'm not going to spoil it, but it's like that made me, I'm like, oh, like that concept was very interesting. So then I started diving deeper into that and then now I'm going to go make a video about it because I think it's useful. So like super chaotic. Like I don't really know like exactly why I do the things that I do.
I don't think it's chaotic. I think as a creative person, you do need to let some impulsive idea to drive that. And if you be super programmatic, I feel sometimes you might lose passion and everything just become mechanical. And I think when you're so passionate to have a new idea, people can feel it. So I also struggle with that. Sometimes I use a automated tool to help me schedule my LinkedIn post. But sometimes I realize, oh, I forgot I was gonna post this today and there's some other idea. I feel I put it in a draft, but when that day arrives, I just feel I don't feel related to the idea anymore. I kind of lose the passion to post it, and I wish I could just post it earlier. But on the flip side, you could argue sometimes you have an idea, you write about it, but maybe you haven't thought about it too deep and your opinion is superficial. It also happened to me. Sometimes I have this idea, it's brewed in my head for a long time. I didn't take immediate action, but after a year, it's ready. It could be maybe just 5 sentences. And when I post on LinkedIn and people really find it valuable. So I don't think if you just started on your content creation journey, just know we're all very chaotic. There's no formula to it. You have to find your own pace and then figure out what works for you, how it's integrated in your life. So actually it was funny when I first met you in person, because I would assume someone has 500K followers would be very outgoing, because you probably really love talking about yourself. And I was surprised how shy and introverted you are. So is that counterintuitive? What do you think being a shy, introverted person, that how can you become a great YouTuber with this personality?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
People are always very surprised for some reason when they meet me.
Yeah.
And I just sit there and say nothing. I literally sat there and said nothing. Like, this is usually the case.
Yeah.
Unless, like, if you ask me a direct question, I'll answer. But usually I'm just sitting there.
Okay, so for example, I'm your follower and I'm a fan. Hi, Tina.
Oh my God.
Are you literally going to run away?
I have.
Yeah, I can see that now. I know.
Yeah, I have actually done that. I'm sorry if this person ever. It's not you, it's me.
Okay.
No, I sometimes someone like it was like, "How are you, Tina?" And then I'm like eating and I choke and I'm like, "That's happened too." Yeah. So I mean, how do I? If you think about it, right?
Yeah.
So there's lots of different flavors of like content creation. There's people who do like social experiments, and that sounds terrifying. They have to go up and talk to people. But think about like the nature of my videos. If you probably feel like I'm sociable because I'm talking to you, but when I'm actually filming it, I literally sit there by myself and talk to myself for like 3 hours. Right? That's like the process. If you're an actually extroverted person, you probably wouldn't like doing that.
Yeah.
So like my filming process is I sit there and I go like, blah 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 for 3 hours. And then, so it's like a very introverted activity.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So I think that's powerful for our listeners who also feel introverted. Maybe you're a great YouTuber. Maybe you're very good at talking to a camera.
Not to other people. No.
So for people who want to start their YouTube journey, what's your advice for people go from 0 to 1?
Nowadays I would say start with short form content. I started as a long form content creator just because there was no short form content when I first started. Much easier like barrier of entry to go short form first, and just to like post it. Like my first video was me on a phone after I worked out and did not shower. So I was disgusting. And the audio was terrible. And I was just like, I'm just going to film it. And I just filmed it and then I just uploaded it. That's it. It's the whole idea about completion, not perfection. I think YouTube videos is a perfect example of that. And I think just social media in general, right? It's like, you measure yourself on the of the pieces of content that you create, and all you really do is you try to improve on it every single time. So the goal that I had for myself was that I would make 1 video a week. Set some sort of goal like that. Even if it's like terrible, you're like, this is terrible, just you have that one goal, and the goal is not measured by quality, the goal is measured by quantity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you have to reach some sort of critical mass. All of a sudden maybe some of your video will go viral, but if you get anxious and think about, oh, will this go viral, and you're never able to produce anything. Actually, the first viral LinkedIn post I wrote was also because I actually wanted to write a very long article about the topic, and then I remember I think it was almost gonna get dark outside and I want to really go out for a run, so it's like, okay, I'm just gonna write 4 lines, very short. I didn't know whether it'll work, and then when I come back it has like 2,000 likes. And if I had really 2 hours, if I sit there, probably it would be a completely different outcome. So sometimes you really need to give yourself a deadline, have some sort of time goal. I'm actually most productive around 5 because I really go for walks around that time, and then I just in my mind I have that deadline, have the urgency, I definitely need to produce something. So another thing is sometimes if it's the weekend, if I feel, oh, Saturday, I have the whole day, I can do a lot of things, and sometimes ended up very unproductive. You might feel the same thing. So what I do is I'll schedule a workout or lunch with my friend. I know if I didn't get anything done in the morning, I'll feel bad if I get out. So I have this artificial, it's not really a deadline, but I know myself. I know how I feel guilty about things, so I kind of take advantage of this negative emotion. And of course, my whole morning might not be productive, but maybe right before I know I have to get ready, maybe around 10 a.m., I will be productive. Yeah,
that's actually, you pointed out a really good thing. I actually want to touch on. I feel like so many people nowadays has to see motivation and productivity as positive. It's never been positive for me.
Yeah,
I'm a very negatively motivated person.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's totally fine. It's like my fear of disappointing people is the reason I get around to doing anything, really.
Yeah.
It's like, and I motivate myself because I'm like, holy shit, like if I don't do this, this is going to be bad.
Right.
It's like, and that fear for me is a lot more motivating. Like I get it, for some people it's like about affirmations, like, you know, you're a great person, you got this, like things like that. And that's like absolutely amazing if it works out for me. It never works for me because I'm just like, okay, great, whatever. Or I go like, wow, I'm such a wonderful person already, I guess I don't have to do this now.
Yeah.
Right? Like rewards also don't work for me because like they work to some extent after I started, but it's not the strongest driver because I'm just like, I'll be like, oh, if I do this, I'm gonna buy myself like chocolate, but I'm gonna buy myself chocolate anyway because I'm too impulsive. So like for me, it's always been like I describe myself as being irrationally optimistic in the long run, but very negative on the short run.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And also a lot of people ask me, how did you start a podcast or LinkedIn? Do you use any tools? So if you have seen my setup, my tools are so basic.
It's on the box.
Yeah. And my webcam is something I ordered from Amazon. This mic is like under $100.
This is a pretty cool mic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. So basically, don't overthink about your setup. But I think it's because of the content itself. And also, of course, your setup cannot be too terrible. Don't overthink. Just get something to make it easy for you to get started and sustainable. Imagine if I have to set up very complicated lighting, camera system. I might also have inertia to produce content, also make it harder to say put in a hard drive and transfer, upload online, find an editor. So if you want to get started in content creation, especially video, find something that make it easy for you to get started, and you can find some editor on Fiverr. You don't have to do everything yourself. Don't stress about it. But yeah, I do feel at this point I want to improve my audio and video a little bit. So Tina, besides making YouTube videos and building Lonely Octopus, what are some other hobbies or passions you have? I know you watch anime.
Yeah, that's my big passion in life, is I like watching anime. Yeah, like I don't know, I just really like anime. Like that's pretty much, if I'm not working or I'm procrastinating, that's like probably watching anime.
Yeah,
I would say. I wish I could say like I have a cool hobby like knitting or like drawing or like building stuff, but like I really don't. I just like watching anime. Well, I just want to be Naruto. Like I just feel like if I could become Naruto, that would be amazing.
Yeah, for people who don't know who's Naruto is, I don't know who's that.
Like the best person ever. Naruto is like a show. It's like from pretty old. It's also a manga. But yeah, I was just watching the anime of it. He's just like a very inspirational kind of person. Like people didn't really believe in him, but he always just had this like irrational belief in himself. And the one thing about him is that he works very, very hard. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, he's just like, I always just make it work. Somehow that's something that I really I just like want to be Naruto, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like other stuff, I'm also really into cyberpunk, like the cyberspace sci-fi anime stuff. I really like that a lot as well. It's like the inspiration behind my new like apartment and desk setup and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, so, I've been there. It's like white, gray.
Yeah, like white, gray, minimalistic. yeah, I really like that kind of style as well. I watch just a lot of anime. Like, I'm kind of embarrassed by how much anime I watch. Like, if there's an anime, I probably watched it. Like, yeah. And then I do like to read, but I don't know if reading is considered like a hobby for me.
It is a hobby.
Oh, is
I
it?
guess,
Okay.
yeah.
Because I think I did incorporate a lot of my hobbies into my job, so there is that. Because like reading is how I get a lot of inspiration for my videos. I love reading, either like audiobooks or reading when I'm walking, like, and when I'm cleaning. It's like, yeah, that's like one of my favorite things to do. Outside of that, it's just like being outdoors. Like, I like just walking.
Yeah. And previously you mentioned short form content. Do you feel you want to create more short form content, get on TikTok, Reels?
Yeah, that's definitely a weakness that I have right now. Not leveraging like short form content. So I have done a couple of them. For me, like, because I've been focusing so much on Lonely Octopus recently, my long form content has not been as consistent, and my newsletter is not consistent right now. So I'm really focusing. So I actually set my quarter goal recently. So I set like 3 things that I'm going to focus on. From the content side of things, I really just want to get that one video a week consistency back, and I want to get one newsletter out a week. That's what we're focusing on. And I think when I get that done, maybe towards the end of the year is when I'm going to start experimenting with like short form content, more so. But it's definitely something that I really want to incorporate myself. Like, it's like short form content for me, like, I consume a lot of short form content, but in some ways I also really hate it, because I feel like I don't really get as much value from short form content, and it's addictive in a way that doesn't feel good, if that makes any sense.
It's like feel good for a second, and then you feel like empty.
Yes, and then you just, that's how they get you, right? Like, in terms of the way
dopamine, and then it make you feel fatigue.
Yes, and then the way that to make yourself not fatigued is by watching another short form content. So, but with long form content, I actually feel refreshed after watching the videos that I watch. Because, yeah, like, so it's like a balance. I want to create short form content that doesn't just feed into that algorithm. But I haven't had to spend enough time to think about it, about how to do it right now.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, because I think the type of platform you use, the type of content you create, it's a expression of yourself, and it's also, you need to think about what type of audience you're attracting. I think the people who have the patience to read a newsletter, to watch a long form video, they just have more trust in you and less likely to be a troll on the internet. So sometimes I also know short form content easy to go viral, and then can help me get more views for my podcast, but sometimes I'm a little scared about, like you said, I think the feedback you give me, sometimes I overthink too much.
I'm the opposite. I like don't think enough. It's like, you tell me about the worries that I should have. I'm like, oh, Dalian, I didn't know that I should worry about that.
New fear unlocked.
I'm like, I literally didn't know that this was a problem until you told me about it.
And then you tell me just do it. So
I'm just like, stop thinking.
So where we're at, so I think when you start content creation, I think it's also to think about that factor, and also the way short form go viral. I think you have a different energy when you talk, but what I like about long form video is you don't have to always be like super animated when you talk. You can be relaxed, playing some background music in, and so I would say just try it out, different type of format, play with it. Don't overthink as much as I do. The worst case, nobody gonna see it. That's fine. Nobody see it, nobody knows. And also for people who have full-time job, especially you work in tech, you want to create those content, and also I guess I want to unlock some fear for people. Make sure you understand your company's social media policy, competitors, and those type of things, because even if in the future you want to be a freelancer while you have a job, I think it's good to be aware of that. I think a lot of tech companies are pretty open and flexible with this, but also knows your manager, your director, your clients might see your video. I think you still need to be authentic and be yourself, but also have the awareness of how people would perceive what you put out there. Sometimes people leave some comments on LinkedIn, it's not very kind, it's not very professional, and just in my mind, hey, don't you know other people, your boss, can see the message you leave on other people's posts? Yeah.
I still would personally recommend short form content to start off with, though.
Yeah.
And I do recommend it just because it's so much less effort to do than long form content.
Right. And also, I see maybe people are so tired of the heavily edited TikTok or Reels. I've seen some very simple and edited Reels go viral. So maybe short form, like you mentioned, it is a way for you to start. You never know. Mm-hmm. So what are some new skills you want to acquire, or the areas you want to improve?
I have decided that I'm finally going to learn Japanese so that I can watch more anime.
Oh, okay.
That's what so that's like one thing. The other thing for me, what's kind of like an ongoing thing, is just like trying to control my chaos. It's like literally an ongoing problem that I have, like different ways of not procrastinating, doing the things that matter, trying to be more mindful, like these kind of like self-improvement. So it sounds like wishy-washy, but it actually is. Like, I think the older I get, the more I realize how important these things are. Another big one is like trying to get over my own fear. Like, I'm very of like fear of like social interactions.
Did you have anxiety before meeting me?
I have so much anxiety meeting everyone.
Yeah,
I'm just like, oh my god, like I have so much anxiety meeting people.
Yeah, what was a specific thing you're scared about meeting new people?
I don't know. I just have like a general sense of fear.
Yeah. Do you feel they might not like you, or they might hurt you, or you just feel, oh, it might be awkward, we don't know what to say?
Yes. Like, I don't know what to talk about, which is so weird. I know on YouTube I'm just like blah 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 like all day. I'm just gonna sit there and I'm gonna say nothing, and that's probably gonna be awkward. So I trying to figure out like what to say. I generally really enjoy hanging out with people after I get to know them. I'm just like, everybody's pretty cool. But it's just like the process of meeting people and then just like interacting with them and then getting to know people is definitely a problem for me. So in terms of like, obviously I have my normal stuff, like trying to improve my business. I'm trying to learn how to do that, but yeah, that's like one of them. I would say another big one for me is storytelling. So I feel like for YouTube I've come to a point where like just like functionally talking about stuff, I've done that for such a long time now. And I think the next like step for me to improve, there's like a few things I can improve on. So similar to you, I don't really have like fancy setups and stuff. Like, I'm not really like as much of like a like an equipment kind of person and like high production quality kind of person. With that being said, though, with the concept of like building better stories to tell, so that depends on a lot of different factors, like how it is I'm portraying information, as well as like visual storytelling, because usually I don't even film any b-roll. I just use like pre-made b-roll that I just stick on like with relevant stuff, right? And I think it's fine to a certain period of time, but I think I am getting to that period where if I truly want to improve the stories that I'm telling on YouTube, I need to learn more skills that involve like visual storytelling. So I'm focusing on that, and I'm reading books on like screenwriting and things like that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So if you were to start your creator journey again, what would you do differently?
Well, so assuming that I'm going to be starting now, I would go short form content first, just because I think it's a lot easier to get started from that format. In terms of like the one video a week thing, I actually think I did like, that was, I like kind of stumbled across that. I think I watched like a few videos from other people talking about what they would do, but I think that was like a very good thing that I did at that time, just focusing on getting a video out a week and not worrying about other stuff. What I would have done differently is I probably would have like started thinking about my content or like my philosophy or ecosystem a little bit sooner. So I was pretty simplistic in the sense that I just I'm like the opposite of you. Like, I don't really think that much. So it's like I didn't really think that much until later on, where I thought about the fact that what I'm trying to portray to people is not just the video component, right? It's also about like building a newsletter. It's about like thinking about products I can be creating. Like Lonely Octopus probably should have started that like sooner. Courses that I was making at that time, I was like, oh, like, you know, I'm just gonna make this course. I didn't really think about it that much, how it all adds up in the end. From a creator perspective, I think the most successful creators are the ones that build an ecosystem. You see like some very successful YouTubers where like TikTokers and stuff like that, and sometimes it just works out. You just make so much money, you're like, great, like you can just do things now and it's fine, right? But in a lot of cases, unfortunately, like what happens to a lot of creators is that they get big really quick, where something happens and they don't really take advantage of that during the time. It's like my time on YouTube, I know is limited. I know I'm not going to be relevant forever. I've already been on here for 2.5 years now, right? How long do I still have left? I don't know. But especially if I keep talking about the same things over and over again, that's not like, there's a point in which like nobody really wants to see you talk about that anymore, right? So thinking about as an ecosystem, like the creator part, the content part, it's just a foundation. Like, what are you building on top of that foundation? What products can you build that support what you care about in this world? What connections can you be making through your content? So thinking more of a long-term basis is something I wish that I had thought about earlier. Also, like automation is also a big one. It took me like over 1.5 years to get an editor. Wish I did that sooner. I edited my own videos for 1.5 years.
But I guess I could argue that could be a good thing that helps you understand better about editing. So when you hire an editor, you're better at giving them directions, what to do, what not to do. I think sometimes doing things that doesn't scale in the beginning could also be beneficial. You just don't want to wait too long before you scale your business. So now Lonely Octopus is doing well. It seems like you have figured out what you want to do as a content creator, as a entrepreneur / small business owner. How do you see your life or career going in the future? Say, do you know where you want to end up? Do you want to retire in the island? And what are we gonna do? Are we also gonna have millions of Lonely Octopus like meet up and have parties,
lonely parties where everybody's just by themselves
together? I think that's kind of cool.
That's a hard question. What am I gonna do? Oh God, I don't even know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. So in terms of like personal level, okay, I would say like start from the business level. I genuinely love creating content. Like there's no end to that for me. I just want to talk, and as long as like there's somebody who wants to listen to me talk, that makes me happy. Like I'm just happy with that. So I want to just improve on my ability to tell stories and to do such things. For Lonely Octopus, I envisioned that as something that I wanted to be like a community of people who are on that self-learning journey, but you know, with other people as well. And more important than that, it's like I'm trying to gather people who are self-motivated and they have a vision for their own lives, right? An independent life that could be a combination of a 9 to 5. It could be like purely as a business owner, freelancer, whatever. But the reason why they're all gathered together is that they have a vision for where their life they want it to be. They don't want to settle for their lives, and that they think that being a lifelong learner is how it is they're going to be able to reach that goal. So that is like the overarching goal. The message that I want to send with Lonely Octopus. That's from a business side. From like a personal level, I'm like 27 right now. I envision myself having a family as like in the next few years. So I want to be in a position where I can scale back if I want to, so I can also focus on my family when that time comes. I really admire many women out there who are like working a 9 to 5 job. And just still like taking care of their kids and things like that. But I also know that there's a lot of struggles when it comes to that. So I'm hoping I can be in a position where I can say like focus on children. We're like, oh gosh, like it sounds kind of scary, but like something like that, like a family, but still be able to pursue the things that I enjoy doing. That's how I see myself for like the foreseeable future, probably like the next year or so. I want to travel a lot. And get over this like fear of like people and like things like that. Like gonna be meeting you potentially in like Southeast Asia as well, right? So I really want to be able to just expand my horizon. I can sit there and read a lot of books, but at some point if I don't talk to other people and meet new people, then it's not like I'm gonna get stuck at some point. And I think I'm getting to that point right now. So that's what I would like to do.
Cool. Yeah, maybe after a few years you'll see baby education family content from Tina's channel.
How to teach your child to self-learn.
Right. How to build AI tools to raise your child.
Maybe.
Yeah, it was great to have you finally on the Data Scientist Show, and I had a lot of fun talking to you. So for folks who want to learn more about Lonely Octopus or reach out to you, work for you, where can they find you on the internet?
Yep. So YouTube channel is just search for my name, Tina Huang, on YouTube, and I should be there. Lonely Octopus is www.lonelyoctopus.com. There's currently like we're prepping for the next cohorts. So I'm not sure when this will come out, but you can sign up for the wait list. That's there as well. And then you can, if you have any questions, you can also you can ask us on the intake forms there as well.
Okay. Do you read every intake form?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Awesome. And do you read the LinkedIn DMs?
Yes, that's the thing I'm bad at. Did you ever DM me on LinkedIn and I didn't respond?
No, I don't think I
did. Okay. Because like
Yeah.
that happens sometimes. Like, and I feel bad because I'm like, people probably just think I'm like not respond. It's just because like I don't really check LinkedIn as much. I would say so. Best way to reach out is probably through the Lonely Octopus forums, because that one I do like monitor very, very closely. YouTube comments I also don't respond as much anymore, just because there's like a lot of YouTube comments. Another really great way, if you do want to reach out to me, is newsletter. I respond to every single comment in the newsletters.
Okay. Is it on Substack or?
Yeah, Substack. So it's tinahuang.substack.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks again, and good luck with Lonely Octopus. And I'm excited to see how your career grows. Maybe after a few years, we'll have you on the show again.
Yeah, I would love to. And I just thought about a good name. If I ever have, this could be called Baby Octopus.
Baby Octopus.
Yeah,
all right.
Who knows? All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Tina.